We're really looking forward now for the opportunity to hear remarks from Republican candidate for the United States Senate, Joe O'Dea. Joe? Thank you very much. I'd like to state for the record that we did invite Senator Michael Bennet to participate in tonight's debate, and his campaign declined to participate, citing scheduling conflicts. Joe, thank you very much for joining us this evening and your willingness to show up. Your willingness to participate in these debates is important, and we appreciate it. Thank you. So, we will go ahead and we're going to let you introduce yourself with your opening remarks. You will have 4 minutes, as discussed previously, and then we will move on to the question and answer section of this evening's participated debates. Your 4 minutes will start now.
Brad, thanks for having me here. Great to be with you here at Club 20, a very, very important part of kicking off this campaign. My name is Joe O'Dea, and I am running for the U.S. Senate here in Colorado. And since this is my first run for office, I wanted to tell you a little more about myself and explain to you why I'm running and why I think I'm the right person to represent all of Colorado in the U.S. Senate. I'm a fourth-generation native, Colorado, grew up in southeast Denver, adopted at birth. My dad was a Denver cop. My mom kept us in line. I washed dishes when I was a teenager to pay for my high school. And after graduating, I went through a carpenter's apprenticeship program. I was a union carpenter for several years. And then I chased my wife on up to Colorado State University. I left CSU a few credits short with a construction management degree because we started our business out of our basement. And that same business, Concrete Express Incorporated, employs about 300 families today. I'm a husband. My wife Celeste has been my rock for 40 years. I met her the old-fashioned way at a bar. I'm also a dad. My beautiful daughter Taylor is married and still lives in Colorado and runs her own small business with her husband David. I'm a proud Coloradan and I love this country. And a lot of people ask me why I'm running for a U.S. Senate spot when I've built such a successful company. Why are you getting into this? They say you don't need to do this. Well, yes, I do. I'm running because this country has been so good to me and my wife. I'm a carpenter who put the time in and became the CEO of a major construction company that's built projects all over this great state. Celeste and I have been blessed. We have lived the American dream. And I'm running because I'm worried about the direction this country is headed. All the division, all the anger. We don't even talk, much less solve problems anymore. I'm worried about the country we are leaving to our kids. Now more than ever, we need leaders who will represent the people of Colorado, individuals who are willing to make tough choices, put partisanship aside, and do what's best for the people that they represent. And as far as I'm concerned, any politician who votes the party line is part of the problem, not part of the solution. The national parties have become vehicles to perpetuate power and to promote discord. And I'm tired of it. I'm running to be a voice for Colorado and for the working people who get overlooked and left behind. And when I say working Americans, I mean the middle class, small businesses, single parents, retirees, the mom and dad who's working 2 jobs. I mean the people who work, who contribute, who produce, those of us that play by the rules and we pay for all this tax and spend spree that Washington's been on. We're hardworking Americans that get up every morning to do our job. And we don't ask for favors or special treatment, just for the opportunity to be all that we can in this great nation we love. Do you know why Washington is so disconnected? It's run by too many people who have never had to work a hard day in their lives. I'm an American before I'm a Republican. I'll put the country and our state first. That's true on every issue. It is especially true when it comes to Western Slope and to rural Colorado. I recently released my agenda for the Senate to challenge D.C. to build Colorado. It's simple. Every senator should challenge the status quo in D.C. and put what's best for their state first. But few do. I will. My agenda is common sense. It's about the future. First, let's reduce the Bennett and Biden spending. Second, let's reestablish American energy dominance to reduce inflation, global emissions. American energy with dominance will reduce Russian influence in Europe and bring stability to the world. There are so many challenges that we face, but we can solve them all if we focus on all the things we have in common. Thank you for your time this evening, and I look forward to some great questions.
Thank you very much. All right, we're now going to move into the question and answer portion of tonight's debate. Candidate O'Day, we have 6 questions for you that were submitted by Club 20 members and several of our partners. You'll have 3 minutes to respond to each question. If at any point some of these are a little longer, if you need me to repeat the question, please ask. I'll be happy to do so. Question number 1, energy is a worldwide commodity. America and Colorado have vast amounts of energy resources that could be exported to markets outside of our borders. What are your thoughts or policy on developing secondary markets for natural wealth that Colorado has? Those could include natural gas, coal, lumber, rare earth minerals, uranium, renewables, and other natural resources.
Well, we've got to get Washington out of the way. The regime that's taken over Washington right now, their first item of business was to kill the XL pipeline and make it very difficult to mine, to use any of the minerals that we have here in Colorado. And Michael Bennet did what he's done here today. He doesn't show up. He doesn't show up to fight for good Coloradans and good Colorado clean natural gas, minerals, things that could make our economy better. My second agenda item, if I get to the United States Senate, will be to establish American dominance in the world with using good, clean natural gas from here in Colorado. We've got to get in front of the permitting issues that are holding all these things up, that they won't let them develop. You hear that it takes 10 years, 12 years, 15 years to get through a NEPA study to build any kind of infrastructure. We've got to peel that back so that we can allow the development of good, clean natural gas. We need to export on both coasts. I've read a study here recently, Koga did, that if we were to flood Asia with good, clean natural gas, the cleanest molecule made in the world, we could lower global emissions by as much as 45% in 5 short years. That sounds like a solution to me that works very, very well for good Colorado-paying jobs here. And so I'll advocate for that. I also believe that Russia is holding Ukraine hostage, holding Europe hostage right now because they control a lot of the fuels that are over there. We export to the east slope, the eastern ports, and we send that right into Europe, and we end that war. We end it with good, clean natural gas. It's pretty simple. I don't know why they make it so complicated, and I'll advocate for all of that. I've also been involved in construction here for the past 35 years of my life. I probably stood at the permit counter longer than anybody in the state. Permits are always hard to get, whether you're building work, whether you're building infrastructure, whether you're building good water storage. That process has got to be cleaned up. And you guys have seen it in the energy industry. It's not only getting through a federal permit or a state permit, but then you've got to go through the localities and get a permit to put a line in to connect it to the infrastructure. All these things added together are preventing us from saving lives globally with a reduction in emissions. So we need to step into that and make sure that we get that cleaned up.
Thank you very much. Candidate O'Day, your second question. What is the role of the federal government in providing health insurance to Americans? Do you support Medicare for all, a completely privatized health insurance industry, or something in between?
I would advocate for something in between. We've got a system in place right now that I don't think is working very well. It seems to be carried by everybody that has an individual policy. We're paying more for health care if we have insurance than we do if we don't have insurance, and that's unfair in my opinion. I think the federal government's job is to get the bureaucracies out of the way so that we can have more competition in our healthcare industry. Making sure that we have 3 or 4 or 5 different providers that can provide health care in different places instead of limiting it. So I would be an advocate for making sure we clean those processes up. I also believe that we should preserve the piece of Obamacare that's still in place right now, which is pre-existing conditions. I don't believe that needs to go away. That's something that should be kept. But the role of federal government is to get out of the way and let these healthcare companies and let these hospitals compete. Reducing red tape around everything they do is important to make that a more cost-effective way of implementing healthcare across the United States.
Thank you very much. Our next question seems to be a theme that we've heard at Club 20 quite often today, and typically at any other policy meeting you ever go to. But water is the lifeblood of Colorado. Given the current challenges on the Colorado River and the overuse of downstream states, how will you advocate for Colorado water? What will you do to influence members of the Senate who do not understand water rights in the West?
Well, first thing I'm going to do is show up. He didn't show up. I'm just saying. We need a Senate candidate. We need a senator that'll go to Washington and fight the hard fight. My wife and I, we started with nothing. We've worked hard all our lives. We fought for everything we've done in our lives. I know how to fight. I know how to argue. I know how to negotiate tough. I think you'd rather have me representing you talking to some Californians than somebody that's from Connecticut that doesn't show up. And I'm going to take the fight to these people and make sure that they understand this is Colorado's water. We got to have our share as well. We need to do what we can as a state to balance what we need. We need to do more on water storage so that with these volatile storms that come through, we're set up, we're ready to accept whatever water God gives us. We've seen this drought for the last 22 years, and we haven't got any new dams approved that will allow us to store this water. And I'll fight hard with the regulators to make sure that we get these permits in place. I understand permitting. I've been at the counter my entire life, and I'll do a good job. We also got to kick California a bit and say, you know what, it's time to do your part. My goodness, they're draining the tub faster than we can fill it, and that ain't our fault, that's their fault. And so I'll take that fight to California, and I'm damn sure going to make sure that we're represented when it comes to our water, because we need it here in Colorado.
Thank you. Candidate O'Day, what federal policies or laws would you reverse if you could, and why?
Well, we just got a gift of the Inflation Reduction Act that they signed. Some numbers are $750 billion. I've heard as much as $1 trillion. I've heard as little as $250 billion. But the one thing that's in there that really disturbs me is we're going to grow another bureaucracy. They've got $80 billion going to the IRS to hire, some people are saying 87,000, some people are saying 40,000 agents, bureaucrats. Man, we don't need any more government, and we don't need anybody coming here and shaking down working Americans for taxation. They're spending plenty of money. They don't need any more of ours. And the thing that I really, argue with people over is they say, well, this is for the upper 1%. Well, you don't need 87,000 people to go after the upper 1%. That's ridiculous. They're going after us. They're going after working Americans. And working Americans, when you talk to the Joint Committee on Taxation, which is a bipartisan group, they come out and say that 72% of this tax is going to be collected from people making under $100,000 a year. That's small businesses, that's middle class, that's people that are having one heck of a time right now because of this inflation that Democrats have caused with the $1.9 trillion they passed a year and a half ago. I mean, we're working right now for a whole month for free. If you think about that, 10%, our money has gone down in value by 10%. And so those are some of the things I'm going to go after. We need to cut these bureaucracies back. We don't need more government at the federal level. We need less. They need to get the heck out of our way. And that's my focus will be.
Thank you. Something we do quite a bit at Club 20 is look at our public lands and natural resources. Colorado is home to 36% of the federal lands, with approximately nearly 24.5 million acres of forested landscape. Our forests provide wildlife habitat, recreational opportunities, and serve as the state's largest reservoir for our water. But when our forests aren't managed properly, they become prey to invasive insects and catastrophic wildfire. If elected U.S. Senator, what policies would you put in place to improve the health of our forests?
Well, again, I'll show up. The fact that he hasn't showed up kind of shows you the problem with our senator currently is he hasn't used his seat. He hasn't used his seat to get good things done for here in Colorado. The Bureau of Land Management, Corey Gardner did a heck of a job, got it here. Now we're talking about sending it away. We haven't heard anything from Senator Bennett trying to get that seat here. You know, all he's got to do is say, Joe Biden, I'm not going to be with you on this appointee, or Joe Biden, I'm not going to be with you on this bill. I need to keep the Bureau of Land Management here in Grand Junction because it's important for the Bureau to be here with the public lands that it's going to govern. He hasn't done that. He hasn't done it with Space Command either. He doesn't show up for Colorado. I'll show up for Colorado. As to the CORE Act that's currently, he's trying to get signed by Biden without bipartisan support. He's trying to shove that through. I don't agree with that. I think that the best way for these policies to be put in place is for them to come back to Colorado, negotiate with the locals, make sure the locals are happy with what's in the bill. And then the last piece addresses your earlier question, which is our forest management. And I believe turning these areas into wilderness where we don't do any forest management is absolutely the wrong thing we should be doing right now. We should actually change the Wilderness Act to allow for automation, and so we can go in and thin some of these forests, take care of them, so that they're not a fire hazard for us and our kids in future years. And so I'll support those kind of policies when I'm at the United States Senate.
Candidate O'Day, this is your last question. What economic policies do you feel should be implemented or removed to unleash the potential of the small business community to advance economically resilient, thriving communities?
Well, I've been in business almost 40 years now, and I call it death by 1,000 cuts. And it's the red tape that government is putting on us at every level, whether it's local, state, or federal. And so I'll fight hard to reduce the red tape, to get rid of things we don't need to do. I joke with my brother every once in a while. We're filling out forms that got to be sent back to Washington, and he and I are curious, does anybody actually read this stuff? I mean, they're keeping track of how my employees are going to get to work and not get to work, whether they're in a car or they're not in a car. Those are the kind of things that we're seeing come through in our city of Denver. And so I'll be hyper-focused. If we want hyper-focused on making sure we cut red tape, if we want businesses to survive and thrive, we have to get government out of our way. I don't know that I could have started my construction company today. I'd need 3 or 4 HR people and a full-time attorney before we had one carpenter or one laborer doing any of the work. That's how much paperwork we're doing to satisfy people that don't really need to know what my business is doing. We need to streamline that. If we want small businesses to succeed, we've got to support them, and we got to get government out of the way. And so that's how I would handle that.
I'd like to thank you for answering all of those questions. We appreciate that very much. As we wrap up, we're going to look at our closing remarks now, and we'd love to hear your final thoughts. You have 4 minutes for those closing remarks, and that time starts now.
Thank you, Brad. That was fun. Glad you guys had me here. Sorry about my opponent. I would love to have this chat with him. It's good to be here with you, and Club 20 is a respected institution. I'm grateful to have the opportunity to speak with you tonight. And Michael Bennett's decision to skip this conversation is one more example of what is wrong with Washington, D.C. If he's reelected, Michael Bennett will be the longest-serving senator in Colorado's history. And what do we have to show for that? Trillions in debt, runaway inflation, exploding crime, a nation ripped apart by bipartisanship. And not only does Michael Bennett not lead, but Michael Bennett doesn't show up. Bennett didn't show up today. He didn't show up because he doesn't think he has to. Think about that. He doesn't think it's important. Leadership is about choices, about priorities. And Michael Bennett made his choice to not show up, and it reflects his priorities for Colorado. Michael Bennett's priorities, they're in Denver. They're in D.C. with the Democratic Party, with Chuck Schumer, Joe Biden. Those are where his priorities are. They're not here on the Western Slope. Clearly, we can see that. Michael Bennett is a do-nothing senator who votes with a party line 98% of the time. Now, I love my wife, Celeste, more than life itself, but I don't even agree with her 98% of the time. Heck, I'm lucky if it's 50% of the time. And look, reporters don't even need to ask where Bennett stands on any issue. Just see what Biden is pushing, and he will be right there next to him 98% of the time. And when Joe Biden was shutting down oil and gas permits on federal lands here in Colorado, Bennett said nothing, did nothing, didn't show up. He could have protected the Western Slope economy. Michael Bennett didn't show up, though. And there's a war going on between Colorado and California over the future of this Colorado River. Has Michael Bennett showed up on behalf of Colorado's water, on behalf of Lake Powell, on behalf of our state's water future? Absolutely not. Michael Bennett doesn't show up. And on inflation, on a growing debt, on crime, or on a border that's security that's leaking like a sieve, fentanyl killing our kids, on immigration reform, Bennett never shows up for Colorado. And what's worse, he talks about these issues, but then has nothing to show for it. Do you know Michael Bennett has passed one law in 13 years in Washington, D.C.? He's ineffective. Bennett is a politician. He talks and he talks, but he doesn't act. He doesn't show up. Bennett is Joe Biden's senator, the Democratic Party's senator, not Colorado's senator. Bennett's blind loyalty to Biden is what's wrong with our politics and our political parties. As far as I'm concerned, any politician who votes the party line is part of the problem. The national parties have become vehicles to perpetuate power and discord, and I'm tired of it. And I'm running to be a voice for Colorado, for the working people who get overlooked and left behind. And that's why I can win. And when we do, here's a promise I'll make to you here today and now. When we beat Michael Bennett, I won't be owned by either party. I'll be guided by my values. I'm a fiscal conservative. I'm a social moderate. I believe in balance. I believe in independence. And I'll work with smart, reasonable, patriotic leaders in both parties to move our country and our state forward. I'll put Colorado first. I won't give an inch to the extreme voices in either party, but I will go out of my way to build bridges with those united in tackling the debt, inflation, who want to protect communities and secure our borders, and those who want to rebuild our discourse and rebuild our nation to be the very best that it can be. And I'm excited for the road ahead, and I'm asking for your vote, Colorado. I'll never do anything halfway. I'm all in. We're going to get this win here in November, and I will show up every day to fight for Colorado. Thank you.
Joe, on behalf of myself, on behalf of Club 20, we'd like to thank you for showing up today and your participation in our debates. They mean a great deal to us, and thank you for being here. I appreciate it sincerely.